Show from the Citizens Bank studio. Thank you for joining us here on SuperTalk Mississippi, the voice of Mississippi. Love to be in here on this show and celebrating so many amazing people across the great state who are working really hard to make this such a great place to live, work, and play. I am so thrilled today. I am always thrilled to have my friend Fofo Gilich, the mayor of Biloxi, come on, because when we talk, a lot of the issues that we talk about affect the entire state of Mississippi, not just coastal Mississippi. So it's always a thrill to have my friend who has a degree in mathematics and made a tremendous career in computer software programming. And we're lucky to have him as the mayor of Biloxi. Fofo, how you doing, my friend?
Thanks. That's really kind, Ricky, and I really appreciate the time we have to interact together. I wish this could be at the Savonia Lodge on Thursday night because we could really cover some ground with a few beers in our hand. But it is what it is, and I like to talk, and I like to talk fast, just like you do, and we'll cover a lot of ground in whatever time you have. But it's great to be here, as you said. Living in Mississippi, especially on our coast, and in times that are going to be exciting. They're challenging. Challenging is exciting when you wind up with good solutions.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. We're gonna get. I want to actually share with you in a second some of what I've been writing about the need for coastal Mississippi to think long and hard about diversification and so on. We'll talk more about that here in just a second. But what kind of things are you've always got a plate full of stuff that you're working on. What's on your major agenda these days?
Well, the expansion of our offerings with regard to, gaming and development and visitation. There's some challenges coming up here with Bonnie Carey in the next, few days. But we need to get in a position to address whatever comes our way. And we talked a little bit about business and challenges in business. You have to be ahead of the curve, or at least anticipate where you're going to go, because that's where you build your 20 years and 25 and 50 years out in the future is by moving and seeing where you got to go, where do you need to be, where what competition are you facing. So that gets my juices going every day.
Hey, so for people who maybe even people on the coast who've heard this mention of the Bonnie Carey, but you don't really understand what it is, I could give you the whole case model on it, but just from the perspective of a mayor, when they opened the Bonnie Carey Spillway to take the pressure off the Mississippi River, and ultimately, out of concern for flooding New Orleans, and that water rushes into Lake Pontchartrain, Lake Borgne, and into the Mississippi Sound. Talk about it from your perspective, for why this is such an important conversation.
Well, like you said, it used to not be a question of, if you could catch any or if you could dredge any oysters. Is how much do you want? And those days are long gone. If you see some of these folks go out and tongue and you come up with a couple of sacks, which is hard work, just a couple of sacks, when you used to get 60 and 70 without a problem, and then you get 300 barrels of oysters when you dredge. Those days are gone. Okay, and the big part in 2000, when Bonnie Carey opened in 2019, and that didn't put fresh water, it put bad water in that sound. It turned green. We lost 57% of the tourism because of the perception that it's not safe to be on the beach. That's not good. That's terrible. And the other day, John Ferrucci from Silver Slipper, a good friend of mine, had retired, and we were out at his site and saw a couple of those oyster boats coming down with a deck, full of oysters, and those would remind you of old days, especially on Point Cadet when everybody had 100 barrels. But I'm afraid, they do the wrong thing. And we not only, as Moby Salangi says, that you'll see those dolphins having problems, but those oysters will be $2 each instead of $1 each now. So,
so what are they officially telling you these days about what their plans are?
Well, they've got to get, I don't know how many millions of cubic, feet per second. Demands how many slots they open. But any of them is going to be at least bad enough. But when it really opens and it starts pushing that, some of the waste from farms, pig farms, and fertilizers from 30-something states and a couple of provinces of Canada, it works its way down here. And the rivers in the next 2 or 3 days, it'll be, right at open and buy and carry time. But I guess the push and the ask of the Corps of Engineers is, hey, you got Morganza has never been open. That pushes it to Chafalaya Spillway. And, how come? Yeah, well, everybody blames everybody. Oh, that's not my job. This is what's got to happen. It just can't be happening. It's always excuses. But bottom line, who gets the problem? We get the problem.
Yeah, it opens up. And as you pointed out, this is not just fresh water. It's over nutrified water. It's polluted water. It comes into the Mississippi Sound, which is not intended. Mississippi Sound is a semi-enclosed body of water. It's a very pristine estuarine complex that was never intended for the Mississippi River to be flowing into it. And so it just completely upsets the ecology when that happens. And let's hope, I mean, what we know for a fact is that the Mississippi Sound, in spite of it being open twice in 2019, it is a very resilient body of water. It will eventually recover. And if they don't dump too much in it, it can sustain a little bit of that. None of it is good. But a little bit won't be the end of the world. Let's hope that that's where we are, and it doesn't get all the way over here and begin to affect Biloxi specifically and the tourist areas of coastal Mississippi. Let's hope that that's not the case.
Yeah, amen to that for sure.
Oh. Yeah. So yeah, that's got to be obviously very, very top of mind to you. Listen, I've been writing a lot about coastal Mississippi and how complicated we are. If you were to take the 6 coast counties, it's got 22 political subdivisions. It's very difficult. This is our history. Very difficult for all of us to get on the same page. We've got economic development organizations. We've got multiple airports. We've got multiple ports, and we don't have a single authority. I call it, if for lack of a better name, a Coastal Mississippi Economic Development Alliance. We don't have a single alliance that can focus on things like, where do we need to be diversifying? If a big customer comes in here and we need to build, for example, a huge mega site, we don't have a single entity that they can work with on the big stuff. And that's something I think we need to think about. The main thing, so not only does that make us more competitive, but it also keeps us thinking about things like this. We have 87,000 jobs that are tied up in government and gaming. 87,000 jobs. So that's the direct jobs, and that is also the residual jobs that come out of that. For example, Ingalls has excuse me. Let me get to casinos have 9,000 jobs, another 18,000 or so from the ripple effect. Let's see, Ingalls has 11,000 jobs, another 15,000 jobs tied to that. Stennis Space Center is 5,000 jobs, another 4,500 tied to that. And then Keesler and CB together, over $1 billion economic impact with 25,000 direct and indirect jobs. That is a lot of money tied up in government and gaming. I'm thinking we ought to have an entity that's thinking about what more can we do to diversify this economy. In the meantime, we ought to be thinking about, if we're a $1.6 billion gaming market now, we should be thinking about how can we be a $2 billion market? Because the reality is, and we got under 3 minutes, so we'll start this and we'll finish on the other side. The reality of the gaming situation is that we have Las Vegas and New Jersey and a growing number of other markets that are taking gaming very seriously. Look what Florida is doing on a number of fronts. And we're a regional gaming site. So we have got to make sure that we're constantly working to get on the cutting edge. New casinos, new offerings, the whole 9 yards. So we can't be satisfied. So we'll start with that. We can't get complacent, can we?
Let me say this about that. Okay, we're a $1 billion market. My 8 casinos in Biloxi are $1 billion market, record after record after record from 21. Okay, I know that I know that. Hey, Biloxi could be a 1.5 billion had we not been interfered with by some agencies, and I won't say Secretary of State or anything like that, but there's at least $2 billion worth of construction that would add 3 or 4 sites very easily that we've been delayed over 2 years. Now, just with the lawsuits that were threatened and also, filed and turned away. And now, our legislature, tried to change the ball games, with regard to Thailand. All I say, and I'm not venting, and my blood pressure is not up. If some of these people would get out the way, we would, Biloxi, it's our intent to be a $1.5 billion market. What does that do? Who makes the most? Off of $1 billion? The state of Mississippi. That extra revenue, you're talking about, a number of jobs and the number of opportunities that come along with the number of jobs and the living and the things that happen when you grow. Okay, it just makes sense. That's the way I operated my business. You grow. You can't sit still, because if you sit still, you're going backwards. I heard Tommy Duff. I heard a lot of other folks who had the same experience I had in growing business. You can't be complacent. Okay, complacency, breeds the wrong thing.
Yeah, it does. Listen, when we come back on the other side, we're going to continue our conversation with the mayor of the city of Biloxi, Fofo Gilich. We'll see you after this. Welcome back to the Ricky Matthews Show from the Citizens Bank Studio. We're visiting with my friend, the mayor of the city of Biloxi, Fofo Gilich. And when we went to break, we were talking about $1 billion market just in Biloxi, and the amount of revenue that this is bringing in for the state of Mississippi is really important. So, listen, I've said this before. We have 15% of the population in coastal Mississippi. We have 25% of the revenue for the state. We are an economic engine, undeniably. And the question is, how do we stay an economic engine? When you think about government and all this sort of, uneasiness people are feeling today about the governmental side of things. And you think, it's not just shipbuilding, it's dentists, it's military, it's, the whole 9 yards. And then with gaming, we're such a strong market. The question is, how do we build it? What's interesting, I've had a lot of different conversations with people, Fofo, about this, but one of the things I recently wrote, that implementing mobile sports betting is something we've really got to get our arms around. Now, I don't know where you stand on that, but what I see is other markets are going there. So they've got casinos, they've got mobile betting, and they're trying to stay on the competitive edge so that they are remaining competitive. Where do you stand when it comes to mobile sports betting?
Well, it done the right way, we can see what the impact in New Jersey and Philadelphia and those folks. But they're a different group than we have. Those are different kinds of folks. And from the details of what is mobile sports betting, is that sports betting, or is that online gaming of playing poker, online poker? A number of things that say, hey, just let's clarify that. And then how you hear about protecting investment. But, my concern is just as anything, preempting. You got a couple of opportunities for some big players who go around some of the hard work that all of our leaders and our people in the business have worked. Now, you can only protect so much, because if you protect too much, you wind up shooting yourself in the foot. And there's that in itself is a problem. So numbers don't lie, and you evaluate the numbers if they're valid numbers before you for consideration. That's always a question. You and I think the same way. Okay, these are numbers to use. Where they come from? Okay, question that. And
hey, so let's drill down on that just a little bit. So I've talked to some casino leaders who are 100% all in on mobile sports betting, very narrowly defined mobile sports betting. So you don't have to be on the premises of the casino to be able to do it. I've had others tell me that don't be fooled, that the whole conversation around mobile sports betting, if you don't put dikes around it, what you end up doing is opening up this whole online gaming thing, and then that's a whole nother ball game. And so what they're telling me, what some of them are telling us is that mobile sports betting is just the move toward full-scale online gaming. So, what's the sweet spot for coastal Mississippi? Where should we be?
Well, as earlier conversations 3 years ago, was, I think, and it didn't have, we try to meet with all our general managers on a monthly basis, and the feel at that time was, if these folks would, register it, just like you do now. You go to any one of them. They have sports book, and you're their customer. And I think the intent, which didn't present a lot of problems, at least in my mind, was, okay, if I'm driving and I'm a customer of the Palace or Beau Rivage or whatever, and I'm not, I can't get down there, and I need to make a bet on Ole Miss or LSU or whatever, it would be the credit and the business would be just as though you were in the parking garage of one of those. But you've not been there, but it seems it morphosized to a lot of different things. The inside the game operation presents a lot of challenges, and it. We just finished March Madness and even the women's game. Yeah, it really presented a lot of interesting propositions. But that was the early on thinking of. But you'd get credits if you were there. But then it changed where that percentage for those for the sports betting was spread across the state, and then there was too many opportunities that people said. Second thought was, in order to get it, we had to spread that little small percentage of sports betting across to the rest of the counties, which didn't seem, it was hard for people to swallow that. So
I get that. So at the end of the day, where I tried to look at this is from, if you could work through the intricacies of that, so that the relationship with the casino is what's important, and you're using the tool that you would use when you're on site, even if you're in Jackson, but it's that relationship, and you can place that bet. Say it's an extension of the Beau Rivage or Harris or whatever the situation might be. Right. And that's all it is sports betting specifically. And that keeps us a little bit more competitive with other markets that are maybe broadening their view of what their online offerings are going to be. This is, it's no way to avoid this reality. Now we can build some walls around it, and I think we should. And we certainly shouldn't let it evolve into online betting. Where you can, full scale online casinos, in that regard. But if you think if we can successfully accomplish that sports betting piece, do you think that would be a good place from a competitive point of view, from an offering point of view?
Well, it certainly would be, in line with, when you hear, well, people from Louisiana, and say, well, man, it's so crazy. If I'm over there, I can't do what I want to do because I can do it in Louisiana right now. So, I mean, you got to have a position that accommodates that without really letting big companies preempt this and go around some of the challenges. We hear all the time, we'll protect your investment. Well, protection only goes so far. But so you got to be outside in front of the wave, and that's what we're trying to do. Not being on top of it and see which way to drop in or drop back.
Which the way where I'm looking at it is not trying to split hairs on how the execution of it would work. I've described how it might work as it relates to mobile sports betting, but I'm just coming from it from the point of view of we're a regional gaming destination, and our goal should be to grow. And that's where a lot of our focus ought to be: grow. More offerings, more opportunities, more amenities. We have got to stay focused on making this a market that is competitive, because the number of choices that people have to go to these days, it's going up every year. Every year, there are more and more competitive situations, and how can we stay in the game? So that's the way I look at it. What I find, though, is that it's I liken it a little bit to the newspaper. In the early days of my newspaper career, when the internet first came on, newspapers were working so hard to put all kinds of things in place to make it hard. We were trying to avoid the reality of the internet. That's what happened. A lot of newspapers have gone to hell in a handbasket because of it. And listen, I spent the latter part of my career working with Advanced Condé Nast, and our focus was on embracing the reality of the internet and recognizing that the digital tsunami is on us, and printed newspapers are not going to be what they used to be. And if we want to be whole, and we want to still be servants to the community and have a viable business model going forward, we got to make a faster faster transition to that. And they have proven that you can do that. But what happened is a lot of newspapers said, man, we're going to protect our turf, until it was too late. And then they died on the vine. So you got to be careful, embracing technology. You can only avoid it for so long. Now, in the case of gaming, it's regulated in the state, it's regulated by the legislature. I think we can safely move in that direction, but we can't let it be a scenario where these big online players come in here and end up taking dollars away from us. I think we can protect ourselves from that. Newspapers did not have that luxury.
Right.
So I'm sure it's something you think about.
Yeah, we do. And there's so many things that come along that are not so related, but in the same gravity of sport, of the betting that we've enjoyed, and the diversity. We got eight different sites, have 8 different strengths and different folks. I mean, that's a protection in itself. We've got 7,000 hotel rooms, and that brings another 50,000 people on the weekend. So our population jumps from 50,000 to 100,000. And there are all kinds of things that come along with that, that exposure. And we want to make sure we capitalize. It may be gaming on this visit, but it may be, fishing on this next visit, or it may be golf on this next visit, or it may be, like I said, maybe I need to build a business here because I got a special, unique a way for these people who are in the neighborhood to say, hey, I need to take a shot at that. Restaurants and bars and so forth.
What's interesting, what we'll explore when we get on the other side is, I completely understand it. This is the way we thought in the newspaper industry. We were trying to do our best to protect ourselves. And what does that mean? It means we were very anti-competition. We're trying to figure out anything we could do to limit the amount of competition, because if you're a responsible leader of an organization, you better be focused on that. That at the end of the day, you're trying to gain market share, not lose it to competitors.
That's right.
So it's interesting that the challenges that you're having in the city of Biloxi as it relates to creating more legal gaming sites is some of what's driving the don't do that is the same thing that's driving the online conversation, which is anti-competition. When we come back on the other side, we'll have that conversation. We'll see you after this break with Fofo. Welcome back to the Ricky Matthews Show from the Citizens Bank studio. We're visiting with Mayor Fofo Gilich from Biloxi, where they currently have $1 billion in gaming revenue. Think about that for a second. $1.6 billion for coastal Mississippi. $1 billion of it is in Biloxi. Boy, that revenue is critical to our state. So remaining competitive, not getting complacent, figuring out how to grow the market in a way that doesn't, throw the baby out with the bathwater. These are all important conversations that are going on. And so a lot of the forces that might be opposed to sort of online gaming of any sort, whether it's sports betting or online gaming, are similar forces that are saying, don't let any more legal gaming sites get opened up. So it's and sorting through that dynamic, competitive, anti-competitive kind of framework when you're trying to take a market that's $1 billion and make it $1.5 billion, there's a lot to sort through, isn't there, Fofo?
Yeah, and I see I got 10 minutes left for this explanation. Now, let me say this about billion for us. And this has happened 21, 22, 23, 24, on the way in 25. That billion, okay, when you said for the state of Mississippi, okay, the billion on the gross gaming revenue is taxed at 12%. So the billion translates into $120 million of cash, goes first to the state, okay? 80 million of that 120 million goes to the state of Mississippi directly. 80 of the 120. Now the 40 that's left, okay, is used to support the whole infrastructure, the visitation, the public service, and education. Again, that $40 million is chopped the right way for a lot of good reasons. $3.76 million of that $40 million goes to the state, to Biloxi Public Schools. Another $3.76 million is going to the schools of Harrison County. That's Harrison County School District, Gulfport School District, Long Beach School District, and Pass Christian. So who's the big winner in that 120 million? The state of Mississippi. So it's beyond me what is wrong with trying to double that amount, okay? Or at least, with the things that are in place, 1.5 billion, on an annual basis. You ask why. You can't understand that that's an opportunity. And these people, when you look at a $700 million investment, that's the one we're now in the middle of another court action. You can't see $700 million is just in capital investment. Then that translates to ad valorem taxes, right? That takes care of everybody. But then look at what it takes to build a hotel room now. $250,000 a key. Okay, so when you're talking about 1,300 rooms or 500 rooms or 300 rooms, that's significant. People with wild ideas and no money don't even attempt this stuff. So this is a for real deal. We could see a $1.5 billion market if it would have been there today had it not been for some things that have happened prior in the courts, and we've been successful, and we don't sue anybody, they sue us. You know what I'm talking about. But bottom line is, when you look at Biloxi from 1992, we still have a tremendous amount of waterfront property that said we can handle 15 casinos, not just 8. We can handle 20. But guess what takes care of that? The market, okay? The dictates. These people don't come out with doing market studies, and they know what can happen, okay? They can see the growth, and I can show you over the years since 2015, 16, and 17 that good business people respond to competition. Somebody comes in the neighborhood, I can show you from our neighbors to the north and our neighbors to the west that every time they invested, the folks that are in business invest unless they don't want to keep up. Because if they don't want to keep up, then they're not going to be in the business long. Similar to what you experienced. You just don't. So hey man, competition it raises the quality of the product, and it does benefit the community that it's in.
So have you been able to analyze it? And we don't have to go into this too deep, but analyze kind of where the pushback's coming from. Because look, aside from what is probably some anti-competition stuff that's boiling around all these conversations, how do you remove yourself from that and think about, okay, what should Coastal Mississippi really be doing? What is it we should be focusing on? Not just to protect the jobs that we have, but to grow the market and make us competitive, because we don't know where we're going to be 2 or 3 years from now as more competition comes to fruition.
That's right. And you got more players in it, put more players in the game. And these are not mom and pop operations. This is corporate stuff that's happening across the board. And I can tell you, if you protect, those folks, that will not respond in building and keeping up, you're hurting yourself. I'm hurt by protecting things. You're gonna, because it's shown, and I've got investment data, building permit evaluation that show the people who do not invest, lose ground. So what happened? That $1 billion now shrinks. Now, what's the best play? Ask them. They don't. I know. I got the data. I know everything about my market, and I can show you the people who don't invest, their GGR goes down. So, what is it wise for us, the community, to do? Encourage growth in GGR. The people who invest, they grow. The people who don't, they don't. That makes sense.
So, what's an interesting factor about this is that observation and that data analysis that you did, the direct relationship between investing year after year into their casinos and their physical structures and offerings, that they do well from a visitor point of view, and those that don't invest, you see a negative impact as well. And that's just inside the market. What you can't assess, and maybe you do that as well, is looking at where proliferation is beginning to happen around us, and what kind of regional markets are beginning to evolve, and which ones are becoming more a clear and present danger to Coastal Mississippi. When you don't think about that, you are not doing what you should be doing. I mean, you got to be thinking about that. You got to be thinking about how do we remain competitive, and we may be fine now, but 5 years from now, Fofo, without doing these kinds of investments, we could find ourselves in a situation where the clear and present danger isn't ourselves anymore, but it's some market that's evolving near us that could be a big problem. Like for example, I was spent time in Alabama. What if Alabama went all in? That could, some people say that's not possible. It could happen. So, we got to be thinking that way.
Well, let me throw this little angle of the business. What I've seen, this business is now corporate business, and it's usually done. And most of those corporations are not here locally. Okay, so bottom line, the competition will come from other corporations that do not have a market presence in the place that. So if the big boys are going to reach across the country, they're going to reach across where their local business is not being tapped. That's a good kind of look at the situation. That's a fact. We used to have general managers that can make all kinds of decisions, but the corporate structure has said now, gaming goes one way, hotels goes one way. Have to report their budget and their operations, bar, food and beverage, and as well as conventions. Okay, conventions has its own economics. So that the thing that would prevent significant investment that's not corporate, it would be. Sort of a long shot, if I'm making my point.
I totally get that. Hey, at the same time, let me add this. I have been CEO of a company over multiple companies in multiple states, and so let's say a competitive threat occurs in one of those regional companies that I'm responsible for. And we're doing capital assessment. And I mean, clearly we're now looking at a market scenario in that market that if we don't invest in that market, we may lose market share. And so we're actually going to reallocate our capital based on where the competition is coming from. So what will happen is this goes to your point that if you end up opening more casinos in Biloxi, what will probably happen is the bar for all of these guys that really are serious about the long term, it's going to come up. They're gonna do things. They're gonna invest. They don't like it, but it's going to help the market overall. This is just the kind of the market dynamics that exists in a situation like we have today. It's this big high stakes game, isn't it?
It is. So but it's interesting. I mean, if us sort of being just observers, flies on the wall. I've gleaned that over the last 10 years. I've seen what happens, but I'm convinced that growth is the way. And people, get out the way. If you don't believe growth is the way, grow.
How do we go from a $1.6 billion market in coastal Mississippi to a $2 billion market? How do we do that? How do we protect all these jobs that are tied to the gaming industry and all the residual jobs that come out of that? Really important question. Yeah.
Even to grow, you'll diversify, but by growing, you will be diversifying. Talking about how many construction jobs are there?
I get it. Hey, when we get back on the other side, we'll get the latest from him about where he thinks all of this is headed, and then we'll see what new is happening in the city. There's always something crazy happening in the city, and we'll find that out from the mayor of Biloxi, Fofo Gilich. We'll see you after this. Welcome back to the Ricky Matthews Show from the Citizens Bank Studio. We were talking about the competitive nature of the gaming industry in America, really, and how does coastal Mississippi, really focus on making sure we don't get complacent about who we have today, and we got some important jobs to not only protect but a market, a $1.6 billion market to make sure it thrives. 9,000 direct jobs in gaming, 18,000 that are indirectly related to the gaming industry. Really important conversation. So Fofo, you want to make Biloxi a $1.5 billion market from a $1.6 billion. With all these lawsuits and all this stuff that's swirling, the legislative involvement, et cetera, what's the end game? Where do you think all this is going to land?
Well, I think people will, after we're successful again. I think we're 6-0 in the court about the reasons why you can't do something. Biloxi was built on how can I help you do something. Well, and some people, for whatever reason, saying, you can't do that because of this. Well, we want to be successful. Since '92, we have more gaming sites than anybody. We were successful, early on, and you lost a few, right? A few people went by the wayside because they didn't do the right thing. But we're surviving, and we're going to survive more. People will make mistakes. People are coming in. We got some good things that happen, and not gaming. The old Margaritaville, is a few months worth of entertainment going on there. I'll guarantee you that this gravity, that our 8 casinos are pulling are being successful, related to the core, but really it spins up because of what we do. So I'm excited. And gravity does one thing. I use this in State of the City. Gravity speeds things up. It accelerates, right? It accelerates things. and that's Biloxi has its gravity, and not to burn a bunch of time, but gravity. If you drop a rock from wherever, after the first second, it's going 32 feet per second. After the second, it's going 64 feet per second. After the third second, it's going 96 feet per second. You know what a Tesla accelerates? It goes to 60 miles an hour in 3 seconds. That's 88 feet per second. So gravity makes things happen. Gravity makes things faster, and that's what we want. We got a gravity. Let's cash in on gravity. So
I sat in a Tesla once and I don't know if you've had that opportunity yet, but I sat in one and went from 0 to 60 in 3 or 4 seconds, and holy mackerel, what an amazing experience that was. Like being in a jet, actually. So all this will work out eventually. I mean, and this is so dynamic because I can understand anti-competitive around the online side. I can understand anti-competitive around future significant $500 to $1 billion developments. I mean, I get all that. I really do. These are things that a successful market has to wrestle with, and hopefully we will continue to wrestle with them and enable Biloxi to be super successful as, the proliferation of gaming continues in America. We've got to be focused on these things. So Fofo, in the short time we have left, what else is on your plate?
Well, again, we've been trying to use since Katrina. We had a $344 million Katrina recovery. We're rebuilding everything you could think of as far as the peninsula and up towards Gulfport. Well, and again, one main thing, we just got back from D.C. meeting with FEMA, heads of FEMA and our senators and our Congressman Ezell, and hey, I got to rebuild a pier this is the third time I've rebuilt a pier, our most iconic pier in Biloxi since 1848, the construction of the lighthouse. A lighthouse pier has been there. And we started with, it's interesting times to be in FEMA at this point in time. So trying to get my $4.2 million to build a pier that will never go away. It includes 320 feet of breakwater, and then a concrete pier pilings and stiffeners and flow-through decking. So that's called mitigation. Bottom line, we had Seymour Engineering develop as was estimate $1.2 million to rebuild an 800-foot pier. We were expecting $1.2 million, an additional $1.2 million to make it $2.4 million, and we were going to put the other $2 million to build this thing that would never go away again. This is Biloxi's money. Anyway, bottom line, FEMA whittled it down to $222,000, and that was the point of the argument. Okay, the second one, $344 million of rebuilding complete deep gravity-fed sewer systems, eliminating about 48 lift stations. That's critical in recovery from a storm, without a cost escalation factor. Okay, which puts us in the last two phases of this 14 different design areas. Last two design areas, we're probably going to need an additional allocation of $111 million. So that was my battle. If I get this done, there'll be two phases left of this complete recovery, and that's been almost 20 years, right? From 2005, and it's been with me every day. I'm preaching what I've told the congressman and people from FEMA. Hey, this has been ongoing, a complete, constant attention from day one. 55 miles of street in 2015 when I became mayor, and we're just a few miles away from having it done.
Well, we're out of time, but this gives you a sense. I mean, when you get obliterated the way we did, we're rebuilding the infrastructure in a way that will be resilient by the next storm. That's so important. Yeah,
100 years.
let's hope we continue to be able to do that. Listen, Fofo Gilich, it's been a pleasure to spend some time with you, my friend.
My pleasure, always. Oh, you and Kyle have just
Yeah.
been tremendous. Call me back whenever you need anything to chew
You
on.
bet,
We
bet.
always have a good time. Thank you, man.
You bet. Have a
good
great day. You bet,
Thank
man.
you.
Have a good day, and we'll see you tomorrow.